Okay, well, I've swapped screens on Streamlabs. Again, this is doing a few tests, so I'm not sure if the stream is going to update soon. Okay, so it looks like I'm a good minute behind of where I meant to be. And I'm not sure whether it's going to take desktop audio, so for a minute there you might actually get double looping of my voice. And then I'm looking to the left here just for my for the new Streamlabs setup. It all seems really cool actually compared to just OBS by default. So it does seem like it's working pretty well. It says there was about 3 people watching or whatever, so we'll see how that goes. Oops. Straight away moving my screen around. I have some of my Unreal menus off to the side. So the layout here is a little bit different than how it usually is compared to last time that I did. But the scene that I've got here is actually changed quite a lot. Now what I'm noticing is actually maybe the Unreal Engine looks like there's quite a lot of lag on the stream, so that'll be something that I need to fix next time that I do this, because it doesn't look like it's coming through very smooth. But a lot of this has changed in the past few days. I think the last video was like 2 days ago or something like that, and I didn't have any of this landscape material stuff done. And then now, obviously, I do. I had the materials available from Substance, and it looks like they've turned out pretty well. There's a tutorial series if you Google landscape materials and so on, and also put his name Ben on the end. I've forgotten his full name, Ben C. Then this is where I learned a lot of the material stuff. And then separately to that, I've been doing some other tutorials that are to do with painting on the landscape. So if I go to the paint tools, originally these little foliage bits, I say foliage because it's all based around grass and so on, but it's actually rocks. The little foliage information, I've managed to link that up with some of the automated systems there, which is really cool. That's kind of what I wanted to do by default, but in the end, I did have. So initially, I had the rock spawner here, which is a procedural foliage component, which allows you to just which I'm still using, but I've deleted it for the most part, and that's spawning like these clusters of rocks. Which I'm not sure what type of rock I'm going to use it for. But the main purpose of that is sort of like clusters of trees, and then I'm not quite sure how to get the settings to work, but it would be like you could get this cluster of trees, which then fades off into this smaller type of tree that can grow underneath these bushes and so on. So you can create little ecosystems with the procedural rock, with the procedural foliage spawner. Whereas the landscape foliage spawner, which is what I've got, or which is what I've changed to. If we can ignore this autosave, should have cancelled it. Okay. So what I changed to was the landscape material foliage spawner, which is actually handled inside the material itself. And so this little thing here lets the I thought it was based on physical materials, so that's the first thing that I tried, but then the second one I tried was these grass type landscape grass types, and you input multiple types based on masks, which is your landscape material paint sample. So I'm doing a layer blend, and then I'm outputting the sand, and that's where the sand is, and then that's where the rocks will spawn. So that's what that does, and then so inside that you can actually have multiple objects that spawn. So in my rocky sections, I've got quite a lot of variation, but in my sulfur zones, all I've got is a just a little mound, small mound. I've not actually loaded up my reference. Let's have a look at that. So even inside the concept, you've got these sort of little rocks and mounds, and that like little mounds like that, which is maybe meant to be a rock, but kind of looks like a mound, and they spawn on top of this sulfur zones, and you know it's all going all over the place. Um, and that's more or less based on some of these concepts up here. I pretty much made a material that looked like that one, or I tried to at least, as well as this section over here, although with less water, because if I'm gonna get water that deep, then I'm gonna be using the actual physical plane of water to do that, hopefully at least. And if I can find one that looks like the mounds, there was one. Yeah, sort of these. That's a bit bigger than the example that I was thinking of. But these big mounds like that would spawn on the sulfur zones. Um, yeah, here we go. So the whole set, I'm imagining that these are rocks that are covered with like thick layers of this like sulfur salt stuff, crystallized sulfur stuff. So I'm actually gonna, because this is like an alien planet that we're on, I was thinking of changing some of this into um, fully crystallized sulfur stuff like this. Would be pretty cool to sculpt. Um, and have some of those like spread across the environment. I guess that would make it look a little bit like No Man's Sky or something like that. Yeah, so that's what like currently all block out at the moment. So I was going to start off by like sculpting these mounds. I think that's what I would do on stream because it does look like my Unreal is laggy, which is what I was limited with in my last Artstation challenge. I didn't stream Unreal very much because even though I'm seeing a really good frame rate and stuff, when it was coming through to the actual um, to YouTube through OBS, it becomes very it looks like it's lagging through the stream. But yeah, so I'm gonna probably open up this and try and like do some little sculpting on that, see what I can do with it. Um, Unless there's anything or there's anyone who wants to provide feedback to the stream as well as learn something themselves. So if there's anything inside this scene at the moment that you'd want to see how to make or how to do, then you can just drop a message in the chat right now. If you're there, I see that at least one person's liked the video, which might suggest that someone's there. And I'm going to look around. I've not fully. I've placed some of these, but I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet compared to actually when I think I placed them before I actually did the environment texture. And looking at this, it's actually holding up pretty well without anything being added to it. So I want to add stuff to it because that's going to look good, I think. But it turns out that I don't need to add it everywhere or, all over the place. So I'm gonna hold back on that until it's done. Let's have a look. So yeah, these little mounds are spawning in that zone, and I suppose that's where I want to kind of start. Open up my Blender. I'm not sure if I want to make it in the. I've named my files in annoying ways. I'm not sure whether I want to just go into my placeholder stuff and work directly on them inside this placeholder file, which annoyingly would make it not a placeholder file. So I'd have to update the name there. Isn't a big issue. Some of these rock things are pretty interesting. I didn't actually talk about them in. Well, I've never talked about them in on stream or on videos. But one of my friends was messing around with Blender, and I guess inside the tutorial they were following, or they just naturally found this scatter thing, and it just so happened that it works really well for the situation that I was going to be in. In fact, I might want to put my other Blender because I'm not going to have my add-ons on this one. So I've got all my add-ons set on this one. This one is Blender 2. Let's see. This one's 2.92, and so there's some good features in there that I want to use, which is annoying because I also want to use this one, which has my add-ons. As you can see, Retopo Flow is working. And I think I've got a few more add-ons on the side here as well, but the actual scatter add-on, which is an add-on, it's built in. I think you can just type in scatter, and there it is, scatter objects. And then all I did for my rocks is got a cube, apply scale on that, move it out of the way. You can add a cylinder or something. And all I'm going to do is probably remove all of that. I'll inset this and I'll move this down to 0. Should still work even though the scale's wrong. And then I'll smooth that off. Make it into sort of like a disc. Because you get some of these discs in like Megascans packs, which is actually a good place. Even though I'm not allowed to use like Megascans, you could still learn a lot by just looking at how they're set up. And obviously looking at their values because Megascans are going to be 100% correct. Or at least, if not 100% correct, then the guys that actually make that stuff are professionals, and whatever they've made is going to be a lot better than what you could sculpt with any ease. So, or you get that, click, and then you click that one, and then somewhere, I think in the tools, object scatter, I think you actually have to type it in, so F3 for me. Scatter objects, is this going to work? Oh yeah, and then you just start drawing onto the object. Actually, it lets you do multiple, which is really cool. It doesn't, like, with some things I just expect it to end when I let go, and that doesn't, which is really cool. And then just hit enter, and it's gonna use the new instancing system to create this. So it's parented the cube to the object, which you can turn to make sure that doesn't render. Which actually is going to, that's a little bit annoying. I guess just make sure it's out of the way. And you can see how it's controlling these instances. And the actual shape that is created by the tool is little triangles. So if I go to individual origins, it's based on the size of those triangles per object. So if I go to instancing somewhere, it's actually in the object section, then it's faces, show instancer in viewport. Okay, so is that gonna, and then scale by face. So I can actually just scale them up like this, or I can go in there and select ones myself and scale that up so that I've got one. You know, if I wanted a pattern here where I'm like, right, well, the middle ones are going to have to be bigger for the shape that I want, then I'll roughly select center ones, scale them up, and then I can start like fading this off. And then you've also got some weird stuff you can do if you just turn on proportional editing. I pressed O to do that. And then you just start grabbing once it's got a good range on it. Oh yeah, I've got it set to connected. And I'll turn it visible. So if I start grabbing this, it's going to do some crazy stuff because it's non-uniformly sort of stretching them. But it can allow you to move things around a little bit if you wanted to, which might create more randomness, even though it was already pretty random to start with, but it'll let you just sort of do some stuff that you want to do with it. And I found that very useful. So, well, so for the in-engine, when I was creating these, like, you know, I put loads of them on because I wanted to see what kind of poly count I could deal with. Whereas the actual rocks I'm going to create in the end aren't probably even going to have these polys, and I did LOD them as well. So that's just how it is. And it's holding up pretty well, you know, testing the culling distance for them. I did leave things on default at one point, but it doesn't even look like they're really culling. I'm not sure how that works. I think this, I didn't even realize that I'd done this, but that looks like it turned out a lot better than over there, which is, that's looking a lot nicer than, well, now that it's doing, occasionally it goes square. I don't know what that is. That looks like it's turned out pretty well. Okay, back to Blender. So, again, clearly unplanned because I'm just skipping from one thing to another. But again, if anyone in the chat would like to know anything specifically, if there's something that you have just seen me do while I'm just swapping between things, trying to fix things up, then you can just put a comment and I'll see what you're saying. So here's the mound. I'm going to get the reference up on my other screen mostly, but there's a mound. This shouldn't be, since that's just what they look like, and I'm only spawning them on the, and I'm only going to be spawning them on sulfur zones, then I can pretty much get away with just sculpting them how they are, rather than trying to probably dynamically create them like kind of rocks. Although I'm sure there'll be some dynamic stuff that I can do with vertex paint later on. So it should be pretty simple, but I'm not overly familiar with Blender's sculpting. So I'm looking for something along the lines of a mesh filter, and this is a dynamic mesh. In fact, yeah. I suppose I'm going to want to go to. I'm going to want to test if I can use a displacement map while I sculpt. So let's have a little look. Displacement somewhere on here. There it is. So if I displace this with probably something that I'm going to want to make custom. So we'll do that real quick. I've got a new graphics card, and I've had an issue recently with it. Sort of, I'm not sure if it's power related, but while I was doing Unreal stuff, it would occasionally make my whole screen go black, which just suggests there's some kind of driver errors somewhere. Um, so hopefully that doesn't happen while I'm streaming. I'm just going to create a new substance, an empty one, because um, there's only one output really. It's really just noisy. It's going to be pretty much like some blurred clouds. Look, I'm going to blend some of this together randomly. I mean, this is what I would have. This is what I would do when I'm creating anyway. I jumped in thinking I was going to sculpt, um, and then I've ended up um, swapping into substance because I need something that's going to help me get there. So I don't mind this being quite contrasted because um, I'm going to end up controlling how much it's offset in the sculpt, and then this was just like add on top. So maybe I'll add that to create some little spikes. And then I'm thinking non-uniform blur, pretty much into the output. So that's too much. Probably still too much. It's probably just going to be subtle. Because once that's actually, like if I were to preview that as like a normal map, then like, the sections that are blurred probably get a little bit too, like even though it might not look too blurred, it can be more blurred than you think. So yeah, that's way too blurry at one. So I'm going to go to oh yeah, not 0.0, just 0.5 probably. Have some areas that are slightly more sorted. And I'm just going to export that real quick. I'm going to name it fully because I'm not really going to save this. Um, and again, my file structure is a little bit rubbish, so I'm just going to put it in this export folder. And I'm only really using it in Blender, I imagine, so. Okay, so now I can try that. Texture, open. Okay, so obviously I need more resolution before I can try this out. So let's go from. Is it going to work with a multi-resolution? I'm kind of testing things out, seeing what's going to happen. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of that bit at the top. So really I'm going to take this into sculpt mode and just remesh it real quick. See what scale it says it is. 0.6, so let's go like 0.3. Oh, it's not a solid mesh, so oops. Hit Control Tab rather than whatever I was meant to be doing, which was yeah, I was meant to hit Control Tab and hit Alt Tab. Edit mode, cap this off. Doesn't particularly matter. I might just stop it from going a bit crazy by extruding it down. Back to sculpt mode. Mesh by 0.2. The multi-resolution still going to work, and then displace. Quite a lot of setup, but there we go. So I can control that a little bit better in some cases. I might just make it like 0.3 because it is just going to be noisy. And then I can turn it on and off while I'm sculpting. So now I can go back to the sculpt mode and I can start probably just adding stuff in where I think necessary, just to really displace the surface. When I alt-tabbed, I opened my browser, open my reference. Turn it into a random thing, although the actual, when this is repeated a lot, it is going to get quite quite repetitive if I add some details that are a bit too much. So because I've got that displacement map on top, which isn't visible in sculpt mode, it's just going to turn into a mess. So I might just end up sculpting it normally, or at least that was a test. Like if I could limit this somehow, which I can by vertex groups, so but that doesn't seem like the best way of limiting it. So if I just add a group and assign it there. Fades out. If I wanted some extra detail somewhere, maybe I would do that, but for now I'll just have it off because I can also input the texture into the brush or something like that to try and make it a little bit better. So what I'm losing by doing what I've just done is pretty much the directionality of what it was before. So I'm just going to grab this and meant to just be more random, really. What's this? Clay. And really, I just thought this would be a good way to start and get into the sculpting, because I'm not doing it with too much planning, because it is just a blob. And it just gets me a little bit used to the tools before I have to do more specific things like the rocks, which are going to be um, quite difficult to make to sell, pretty much sell the effect. Actually, might just try the vertex group, but by limiting it just to the top. Um, Help it a little bit. I mean, that is what it looks like. It's just a crazy thing like that. And if I baked that and pretty much just threw a tiling texture on it, then it probably would work. Um, Looks like they're always going to be shown. I could probably apply this and somehow, I don't know if I could start sculpting it or something. Maybe I just need to smooth those areas or remesh this one more time. So if I go to, yeah, I probably do actually. If I remesh this now, which apparently doesn't work. Can't remesh it with the multi-res modifier actually, that's why. Maybe I can do that if I go to base. No. So I can't remesh it, so I'm just going to solve these issues. I'm not quite sure when they appeared. And actually, what I could have done is there's the topology moving around tool. If I hit smooth on that, even though I do want to smooth out some of these sections, but that's just going to smooth the topology more than the actual shapes that I've sculpted. So rather than just solving issues, I'm getting rid of some. I'm not getting rid of detail while solving the issue of the points. And yeah, so really it's just a blob. So I might as well, since again this is like an Artstation challenge and time's limited, might as well just show how quickly I can bring this to a remeshed model. Because I mean, it looks a bit rubbish, but um, that's just what it looks like. Maybe I could create some harsher sections, which is probably going to mess with the displacement. And maybe just to be a little bit better about things, I could completely cut off that bit that I just did with the new tool. Let's see how this works. So if I cut this off early, it's going to cause major. I don't even know why I'm sculpting in a normal view mode, but it's actually proven to be quite helpful. I just started sculpting in whatever viewport I was in. I was just thinking by chopping some of that off, I could add it to a disc of its own, but I guess it's already on a disc, and that's why it's falling below the floor. So that it's going to hit, the point of which it connects to the floor is going to be a bit different. Actually, I've got warnings down here. Skipped frames. Okay. Again, if anyone is in the chat and wants to provide feedback to this, then you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I guess what I do want to do is back to object mode, and yeah, I think that just adding that displacement does just make it look how it is. I mean, I should probably just do variations rather than whatever. I think it's going to be more on the material side of things. So maybe I could do the displacement in Unreal as well. Tessellation displacement. So maybe I could just take a maybe I could just combine this with a little bit of stuff going on. And I'm starting to think about how I could do it in Unreal, and I'm going to need some more masks for Unreal. So if I go, so that's really going to be like a color mask, which I guess I don't want it to go fully white at any point, so I could lurk between two colors there, or a few colors. This could be a displacement of sorts, and I've still got one or two more channels which I can add stuff in if I can think of anything else while I'm doing it, which will most likely just be a variation of that. But yeah, actually that's going to work probably pretty well for the I'm probably going to want that normal map, just as a generic normal. Um, and then looking at these images again, if I were to do this more procedurally, is there anything else that I would want? Maybe a super globby, crystallized version like that is pretty cool. Proper crystallized like that is also very good. Maybe I'll just make one that's a little bit more blobby, because this is like granular. So if I go and blur that, oh yeah, I forgot to post this to the Artstation. If you just give me a second, I will do that. Okay, that's pretty good. I will leave that like that. So blurring it and then slope blurring it by itself, which is the blurred version of it, and then that creates these. I use this a lot, and I don't know if there's other ways of doing it or whatever, but I tend to use that quite a lot. I could even probably do a, because these are quite like strange. I'm just going to see what it looks like if I do a non-uniform warp by itself as well. And if I change this to, it's always good to test what it looks like with trails. If that creates anything interesting. Maybe it does. That's not the one that I meant. I was meant to go for a multi-directional warp. And could transform this slightly. Hello. I realized I posted this and then I didn't even. It's all a big test at the moment anyway, but I didn't even post it to the Artstation page, so I've already been doing this for a little bit. But if you could let me know about the quality and so on, then that would be good. In terms of, I know that when I go into Unreal, it can look quite laggy, even though I'm seeing a very good frame rate. And I'm moving around just fine. When I actually, when you see this, I end up just seeing it get a bit laggy in my preview screen, and then eventually, like a minute later, on the stream. But this is pretty much where I'm at. If anyone's got any questions about what I've done so far, then I'll answer them. And at the moment, I'm just messing around with creating some of these mounds, which I thought was like the easiest place to start if I was to do a mesh. And that's evolved a little bit into creating sort of a dynamic system for it. Eventually, hopefully, an Unreal. I'm just experimenting with ways to make this look a little bit more crazy. And then blend over the top of it with the original, maybe the original blur would add a little bit more randomness, sorry. Maybe if I min that. No, that's ruined it. But a multiply might do some things, just a little bit. Yeah, I'm not sure what I need to change in my settings to make Unreal not lag, but maybe I'll try and catch someone that streams Unreal fairly regularly, and maybe they'll have some tips. Because it must be like there must just be a setting in Streamlabs that I've missed somewhere that's just doesn't like Unreal. And it was the same in OBS, which is why I try and keep it outside of Unreal pretty much, mostly. So what I want to blend on this is the non-blurred version to make sure that it is still spiky. And to be fair, that's not looking very detailed. So I like to either make it tile patch to allow it to get some you can add rotation variation, but mainly I'm looking at making it with some size variation. And I'll get some like big bits, some small bits, a bit more randomness than what the initial one was. So that's like, it's quite random, but it's quite large. So I'm making it smaller. And you can see there's just a lot more variation in there. And then that's like the detail. So hopefully this will work. Could even just try the reverse of what I did here, which is if I just get an invert right here, it's going to start like squashing it inwards rather than. I'm not sure whether that's useful or not. Probably not for me, because these are just basic. Going to overlay these in Unreal anyway. So that's another map that maybe I want to create some. Just to create some more randomness rather than it being a direct copy of the one that I just had. Just move it around a little bit. Just before they would have lined up right on top of each other. I'm going to input a solid value into the alpha, and then we'll call this T sulfur mask. I don't particularly need to add the word masks there, but if I call it I can't just call it sulfur, so try this. I'm probably not going to do anything with that for a little while, but it's just something that crossed my mind while I was working with this, which again is just a random thing. And what, even though I don't need to retopologize this, I do have retopology tools. So I might just try that real quick and see what happens. Oh. So obviously I could just procedurally unwrap this or decimate this, sorry. But I like this tool and I might as well just try it. And overall it'll just make it a lot more neat. And we'll just see how this goes. It's looking a bit weird because I'm just kind of doing it randomly at the moment, but it's a bit of fun. So I'm going to undo all of that pretty much and decide how I would want to be done. Some really cool tools in here. It's like, probably just don't need any of it, but I don't know. Let's try a few different tools out, see what we're doing. Again, the main point of me picking such a random little lobby thing right now is that I do want to just test all these tools and find the best thing for me to do right now for this project. So me just messing around here is pretty much me just finding out what I'd want to do and how things work, and jogging my memory with a lot of this stuff that I've used before, and just finding out if it's the best. But just after opening that for about 5 seconds, I think it's pretty obvious that for something like this, I'm really just going to want to duplicate it. So small mound, go poly and high poly. Small mound, high poly. And low poly. So I'll delete that retopo thing that I added. And yeah, so I'm just going to, rather than retopologize this because, again, it's very basic, I can get away with just automating it all. So low poly is just going to be the same mesh, but with an extra modifier, which is the decimate. And it's not looking very different at all. 8,000 polys is still quite a lot for a little mesh like this. And the shape's really not changing all the way down to like 1,800. So if I were to apply this, so I'm going to duplicate it and then I'm going to apply it separately because so I want to make sure that it's working first. I mean, there's probably still loads of polys there that aren't needed. So I could, so actually what I like to do is go back into sculpt mode on it, and you see all these little glitches. You can go back into sculpt mode and slide relax them with the smooth, and that's going to solve some of these issues with minimal minimal actual. It looks like the shading's changing, but the smoothing of it is localized, which is better than doing it in edit mode because you get to choose where you want to smooth, but it shouldn't really be changing the shape. I can try and demonstrate that on the side here. If I'm hitting smooth on it, you can see that it looks like it's getting smoother and the shape's changing slightly, but I can actually just smooth some of this stuff out and get rid of some of those bugs without having to change the shape. And maybe because decimating it from a high poly mesh is going to result in it just sort of trying to do the best thing from the very high point. But if you add that as like an iteration and you decimate it again, then hopefully some of the parts that it gets rid of after the initial one would be sections. Hopefully that would we want to try and find a way of it removing some of that detail on the flat faces where it doesn't need all those polys. So I just tried planar at 12 degrees. And if I go into this mode, we can kind of see that it's really, really destroying the mesh, but only in these sort of flat sections, which maybe could have just been flat anyway, versus what it was before, which is way more dense. And there's no real reason for me to need to go so low. But if the visual difference is isn't very much, then maybe that's better overall. Because I think an object like this is going to look fine in the end anyway. I guess the main problem with all this is that I probably can't displace. I can't displace anything on this. So maybe instead of displacement, I would do some small bump mapping or parallax for a mesh like this. If it's going to appear in the environment a lot and you're going to be able to see it very, very close, then I don't know, maybe some of that's better. I haven't decided. I don't know too much about what's better and what isn't. And that's just like a really quick way of automating the mesh. I don't need the bottom here. So if I go into edit mode, might as well delete the bottom, scale it outwards. Which I have the I have the thingy on anyway. And obviously that isn't going to work with the initial sculpts that I had, which the shape doesn't scale out like this. But when I bake this, I can fade this out into like a dirt based on whatever, and maybe that'll make it, well, I'd probably fade it out into the sulfur material to try and make this transition look a little bit better, hopefully. Or in general, it could just fade out and be, if I can get pixel depths offset stuff to work, then maybe that would be preferable as well. But again, first test, so we might as well find out. Export this. Looks like my meshes folder is pretty empty at the moment, whereas my Unreal isn't so empty. So, to be fair, it's pretty boring. It's a pretty boring stream. Hopefully, when I get more into the rocks over the next week, the stream will be a little bit better. I'm only really going till 9 o'clock. Don't know what I'm looking for, to be fair. Oh yeah, okay, so I put it into the actual content here. And so we're going to go with mounds. I'm going to change the mound small into this one instead. And let's see what happens in Unreal. So it's only going to appear in the sulfur sections. And it looks like the rotation is being a bit annoying. And the overall scale of it is quite large. So it's definitely going to work. I just need to change some settings with it, but I'll continue with how it is. And really, I guess I don't need to apply a bake to it. Like, I don't know if I'd have any benefit from baking. Like, is that high poly really going to need baking from that? I think I'd probably just do that in a material instead. But it was all a good little test. So maybe I'll import some of those textures and try and make a quick sulfur material in the 10 minutes left, and then I will do next stream next week, see what's going on, see when I can do that. So, materials. And Can I vertex paint foliage? No, I don't think I can. Why not? Yes, so take a section like this. I probably want to have variations for sure because this isn't looking very good. As you can tell, it's just the same one. So yeah, creating a few variations is going to be good. I might just control it by like the vertex color or something like that because it seems like it's pretty crazy. Okay. I guess it's just a basic material, so we'll start with that. Generic sulfur. Textures. Landscape textures, we'll go for a new folder with sulfur. I need to actually export this texture. If I think this okay, why not? Normal. I really shouldn't be calling it. I should be calling it like generic sulfur rather than adding the actual name of the. Yeah, I can't call it sulfur norm because it is what it is, but it's not sulfur when you add the n on the end for the name type. So I picked the wrong one there. Don't need a full this. That was for Blender. Go with masks. And what else? Into the material really. So I got one that's going to control the color, although the color I want to be a little bit more random. So I'm going to try and figure out a way of making it go a bit more crazy because in the reference, I mean, we got like this solid yellow, we got white going into yellow into this darkish color. And that tends to be what it does all over the place. So that's what I want to try and make this look like. So I might as well do a bump offset because we're going to need it. I'm not going to be displacing on that mesh at the moment. I might change my mind and make it displace, but I'll do a bump offset rather. I think my displacement was the second one. Is that usually just a solid number? I think it is. And that's going to go into the UVs of this and itself. I'm not sure whether you have to do this anymore, but you can change it to shared. Which I'm not sure what that does. From it saying shared, I'm like, right, well, it must share them, although I think by default, obviously, it does share them. So I'm not quite sure why there's an extra setting there for saying share it, but someone maybe in the chat could tell me. I've always just put it on because it sounds right. So I'm going to displace some of the textures here, and then channel. Let's have a look at these channels. So that's going to control the difference between the colours, but also that's going to be colour as well. Maybe, well, that was going to be displacement actually, wasn't it? Like a better one. This is going to be like more variation in the colour. So let's start off with that. Colour, could probably use one of these for the roughness. This one for the roughness. But I'll put it through a lerp as well. And we'll promote them to and really that's going to be used everywhere. So if I do that again, or maybe just so I'm kind of faking a lot of masks here rather than importing the full thing. Uh, keep going. I don't know why that's coming out black. Oh, is it this? Hold them to one. High one equal one as well. It's roughness. That's multiplied by 2, and then what I want to do is I'll just subtract 1, see what happens. Too much. Contrast it maybe. Really just messing around for a moment. Let's enter a solid value in here because I'm previewing it right now. Let's just remember what I did with the landscape because it was from a tutorial. What I'm really doing is just controlling the roughness and specular. So as you can see, it would appear that using NVIDIA Broadcast is a bit rubbish, because I think obviously it's using the graphics card to denoise things. It's caused issues with the stream in terms of, I guess, in more GPU intensive sections of the Unreal Engine edit stuff. It must have just crashed in general and crashed the software here, as well as making things crash and slow down in Streamlabs. So a few technical issues here and there, but to be solved for the next stream. I'll probably end up deleting this stream. It's just been one big test for streaming, and I suppose even though my Unreal crashed, getting used to sort of streaming some of this stuff is probably better than I'll rewatch it. I'll see how many issues there were and whether my microphone's been gone for a long time. But yeah, thanks for joining, and I guess I'll see everyone next time because